and happy Wednesday. Wow, first week of September. Can you believe it? It just feels like we just started the year and we're already going into the end of 2023 here. Well, welcome to today's live level up conversation. Whether you're tuning in live and seeing me live right here or catching me on replay, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's dive right in.
Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun. Market update. Speed round. Award-winning financial pro. And now, get ready. I present to you Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Hello, friends. It's great to see you and so many of you joining from all the different platforms. It's wonderful to have you back on the show. Yeah, I hope you had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. I will tell you, I took a few days off, took the kids out. We even went on a boat ride in San Diego. It was it was really necessary and much needed. And let me tell you, I feel so energized. I have this motto that you need to slow down sometimes in order to speed up. And this was definitely one way to do it. All right, for those of you who are brand new to the show, hello, I'm Winnie Sun, your host, an award-winning financial pro, a Forbes contributor, and a CNBC council member. And yep, we are streaming here live on over half a dozen social media platforms, including Modern Mom. It is great to have you here. Please jump in, take a moment, say hello, introduce yourself. I mean, we're in a fall now. I'm excited. I love the cooler weather here in Southern California. I'm not sure how your weather is, so let me know how it is in your zip code. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those days, right? One of those days, first week of September. Let's tee it up and tell you how the market's doing currently. Now, I wish I had better news, but unfortunately, as you're seeing on the screen, triple down day across the board. Dow is currently down 268 points. The Nasdaq is currently down 180 points, and the S&P 500 is also down over 40 points as well. But the market's not closed. We've got a few more hours to go. Hopefully, it'll come back and improve a little bit. But so far, September is looking kind of sluggish. Yeah, unfortunately, the stock market decline. There's a lot of concerns about whether the Fed will deliver another rate hike this month. The Federal Reserve, as you know, has indicated that there is definitely potential for further interest rate hikes before the end of 2023 here. So we're seeing some challenges in the technology sector. A lot of the names that you're very familiar with, NVIDIA and other ones, are unfortunately down today. And part of that reason is, of course, the concern of economic data that's come out. And interesting enough, you would think, well, is the economic data negative? Not so fast. Actually, it was strong economic data because strong economic data also could translate to higher rate increases on interest rates, to help mitigate, of course, inflation, because inflation continues to be a concern here in the United States. So the recent economic data came out, particularly in the services and manufacturing sectors, really were very positive. And perhaps this is what's driving some of the concerns about the likelihood of another rate hike before year end. Now, traders are currently pricing in, as you're seeing today with the market down across the board, a 91% chance that the central bank will maintain its rates at its upcoming meeting this month. But that doesn't mean that they think that rates won't be going up again before the end of the year. So you're seeing some indecisiveness, I should say, and also some negativity in the financial markets. The Federal Reserve stance on, and of course, oil prices continue to give us some pressure. Oil prices have risen recently. This is primarily influenced by supply cuts by Saudi Arabia and, of course, Russia, and the potential impact of headline inflation and future rate hikes. Yeah. So, unfortunately, rate hikes are necessary, but if you're looking to purchase a new home, or if you're looking to refinance, or if you have credit card debt, increases in interest rates just no bueno, no love, and certainly will create havoc on your monthly budget. It's something that I know many of us agree we don't want to see. All right, let's segue though over to the story that's coming out on the East Coast. For my friends in New York City, you might be experiencing this now already, especially if you are an owner of a short term rental. For short term rental, for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, is another word for like Airbnb or VRBO or things like that. So New York City is putting a crackdown on Airbnb and short term rentals and VRBOs. So next time you go visit New York City, let's just say there might be a few less Airbnb available for you to choose from, and maybe you're gonna decide that hotels are the way to go. Well, recent regulations are specifically targeting Airbnbs and other short-term rentals. This is something that went into effect, you know, earlier in the year, but now they're really cracking down in New York City. This is going to impact tens of thousands of illegal short term listings. They're saying that we're just enforcing an existing rule that came out early in the year, but this new rule does strengthen enforcement of existing regulations governing how short term rentals can operate. This is called Local Law 18, which was passed in January, which requires short term rental hosts to register with the city government. Now, this isn't something new. Now, I've actually looked into this myself. I know many my friends and clients and people that I know own Airbnb properties. And they're saying, it depends on where the property resides. Obviously, if you're in New York City, it's probably going to be a lot more strict. And if you're picking something in an area that's more rural, that doesn't have as many properties or residential properties, probably going to be a little easier to do so. I know here in Southern California, like near the national park near Joshua Tree, I know they had less regulations early on, but perhaps that's changing as well. But here are the benefits of registration. Registration serves, as they say, a clear way for hosts to comply with the city's long-standing laws. But it also helps those of us who are traveling to different cities that maybe we're not as familiar with to say that, these are accommodations that are regulated. And so there's less chance of unsafe accommodations. And of course, curbing the proliferation of illegal short term rentals, which, let's be honest, if you're staying somewhere in a neighborhood maybe you're not that familiar with and you're looking just for somewhere safe that's convenient, you want something that that is properly regulated. Well, this is what the argument is from the city standpoint. Now, this oversight is by New York City Mayor's office. They're going to be implementing all these rules. And these are some of the things that you have to do. They're saying that legal short term rentals are going to be defined as just properties that are hosted by no more than two individuals. You can't host, more than two is not going to be okay, and the host residing in the dwelling unit. So I'm thinking this kind of pertains to like apartments, right? Like maybe the host lives in one unit and the other units are being rented out, or maybe it's a duplex, something like that. And they're also saying that guests must have access to all parts of the home. I'm guessing that's from a safety standpoint, or just another way to mitigate bad experiences. And they're going to have tighter regulations for eligible hosts. So eligible hosts must demonstrate that they're of their residency in the dwelling, that they are renting, and compliance with municipality safety codes and regulatory requirements, and that if you violate the rules that they have now put together, these regulations are going to require violations now going to cost in an area of $1,000 to $5,000. So if you want a short-term rental and you don't want to do it correctly, that can be very, very costly. That could actually be like your entire month's revenue, if not more, depending on how much you rent your property out of. So they're also saying now that the platforms themselves, like Airbnb and VRBO, are now obligated to also ensure that users on their site, on their platforms, follow the New York City regulations. So 40,000 Airbnb listings are in New York City alone. So these regulations are expected to significantly reduce the number of available listings. and because these are just going to be much stricter rules. So some of the host concerns, I would say, because there's always two sides of every story. So you're like, okay, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Like if you're going to have a business, right, that there would be licenses and whatnot. Well, if you own a short-term rental, that's like a business as well. So there should be some regulatory mandates that you need to follow in able to run this type of business in the city of New York. Well, some hosts are saying, well, I don't know about that. They're saying they have concerns that these crackdowns could negatively affect families who are just trying to supplement their income by renting out their homes. And even Airbnb's global policy director said that these new rules would actually harm the New York tourist economy and limit accommodations options for visitors. Now, let's think about that for a moment. Yes, they would certainly limit accommodation options, right? Because there'd be less, because they would be like less illegal short term rentals. But then we want our tourists to be safe, right? And I think that if people come into your city, if they're in a regulated short term rental, and they're in a safer situation, I would feel like that would actually encourage more people to visit. And then if more people follow the rules, could they? I guess the question is, if they follow the rules, is there a cap on how many short term rentals? Or if they just follow these rules, they can actually operate a short term rental? Those are questions that I have. I don't know the answer to that, but I think those would be important to be able to evaluate whether or not this was a positive or negative decision overall, right? So this is not something new. In fact, many US cities, such as here in Southern California, Santa Monica, Philadelphia, and San Francisco, many places have very strict regulations. Sometimes, regulating these short-term rentals. I know San Diego is very strict about how many that are allowed in residential areas, but yeah, it's just these are just ways. Of course, they're going to be limiting on housing availability, and also being really mindful of community disruption, because some communities don't want a lot of these short-term rentals because they're saying this impacts housing prices for people who actually live in the area and don't use their house as a business, as well as some properties have a lot of partying going on and disruptive people who don't know where to put the trash and park in places maybe in front of your house. So there's a lot of community complaints. This is not something new. Anybody who lives in a community knows that there's like the homeowners association that can be cause issues or help the community depending on where you live. And if you've ever checked out the website next door, you know just how many complaints can come from any specific neighborhood. So nothing new, but still very interesting nonetheless. All right, let's segue over to our next story about Elon Musk. Now, we talked about earlier about increasing interest rates. Well, if you think that borrowing money is just for normies like you and I, like normal people, think again, because Elon Musk actually has a $1 billion loan from SpaceX. All right. So Elon Musk, after doing some research on this story, I found that he sort of sometimes uses his other businesses to borrow and serve as banks for his other businesses. In fact, Musk secured a $1 billion loan from his aerospace company SpaceX in October of last year. Now, this sort of coincided with the acquisition of Twitter, which he has now renamed eloquently X. Now, the loan backed by SpaceX, backed by some of Elon Musk's own shares of SpaceX, he did, of course, repay the loan with interest in November of the same year. So it wasn't like the loan was for that long. But to give you an idea, is despite the loan repayment, this financial transaction actually drew a significant portion of SpaceX revenues, right? It's $1 billion loan. And at the end of the previous year, SpaceX had approximately $4.7 billion in cash and securities. But that's not all. Elon has also used Tesla stock sales to fund Twitter's acquisition. To finance this acquisition, Elon sold nearly $4 billion worth of Tesla stock in November. So in total, he sold about $23 billion worth of Tesla shares just in the previous year alone. So yeah, so some of us, might go to mom and dad or might go to the neighborhood credit union to borrow money. But fortunately for Elon, he has such wealthy companies that he's able to borrow from them directly. And in fact, Elon's acquisition of Twitter, I should say, was partly funded by loans of Wall Street banks, including Morgan Stanley and B of A. But these loans were also secured by some of Musk's personally owned Tesla stock. Now, Twitter is responsible for repaying this debt with interest payments. Get this, totaling approximately $1.5 billion a year of interest. I know. So if you think that your student loan interest is high, or your business loan interest is high, or your mortgage interest is high, well, I guess Elon's interest is even higher. But the question is, how much in percentage is he paying versus the rest of us? I don't really answer. I don't have that information with me today, but that'd be interesting to learn as well. So Fidelity, which is a stakeholder in Twitter, has recently lowered the company's valuation. In fact, just this May, they estimated that Twitter's value was only a third of what Elon had initially paid for it. This was back in May. I don't know if it, the rebranding to X, if that increased the valuation or decreased the valuation, but certainly we can all agree that buying something for one price and having it worth only a third of what it was worth not that long ago is pretty disappointing, right? Yeah, so Elon has a track record of borrowing money to and from their different companies, and this has been in the news and financial news, and so people are really paying it very, very much close attention because, as you know, he's also now working on a project called Project 42, which is believed to involve the construction of a glass house for Mr. Elon Musk. So, yeah, interesting times. Interesting story. But I mean, it's always interesting to see what the rich and famous do, right? I guess it's financial news for you. I know a lot of people are saying, like, yeah, interesting. And, first world problems, but I guess that's how the wealthy can do. They can leverage their other businesses, leverage properties, leverage, income, cash flow, everything else. All right. So federal student loans, though, let's talk about this. We've talked about this on this show quite a bit, but for those of you who have student loans or who have loved ones with student loans, you may know that starting this month, September 1st, federal student loans will once again be accruing interest for the first time in over 3 years. So that's been a long time. The pandemic forbearance on payments and interest initially was introduced by former President Donald Trump. This is back in March of 2020 when the pandemic really went full blast here in the United States and started. This has officially expired after multiple extensions. So for those of you who have student loans, know that interest has already started accruing, and you have about a month until your first payment, which is going to be due in October. Now, if you've saved up some money in the last 3 years, it actually would be smart for you to make a payment sooner rather than later, and doing so before October, because right now interest is already starting to accrue. So the more quickly you can get your payment down, the less interest you will have to pay as well. Now, to determine the exact due date, it's going to be important for you to contact your loan servicer for that information so you know that when your payment is due. And if you're unsure about who your loan servicer is, you're probably not alone. I actually talked to a couple of people last week who weren't quite sure. You can actually find this information on the Federal Student Aid website. So do know you want to pay attention to this. If you have student loans, do get on it. Check out the Federal Student Aid website. Find out when your payment is due. And if you have money set aside that you've been saving the last 3 years, go ahead and start making payments as soon as possible, because interest will continue to accrue. So staying current with payments is going to be very, very smart. So until September 30th of 2024, late or missed payments will not result in delinquency or negative credit reporting, but interest will continue to be due. So if you're having trouble making payments, do know that there are certainly some options out there. You want to take a look and do a quick Google search on the SAVE program, which is a saving on variable on variable saving on valuable education, which is a SAVE program. That's an income-driven repayment plan. So just do some research. There's a lot of options, especially for those of you who earn less than $32,800 a year. So that's $32,800 a year. You may even qualify for a $0 monthly payment. So take a look at the different options and make sure you're just on top of this, and don't wait till the last market. Don't wait until the last minute to see how much you owe and when everything is due. Yeah, you don't want to do that. And you definitely want to make sure you keep on top of all student loan payments. All right. All right. Let's jump in. Take a look at where the market is before we close shop here. The Dow is currently down 265 points. NASDAQ is down 175 points. And the S&P 500 is also down 42 points. Triple down days so far. Market's not quite closed. We've got a few more hours to go. So definitely know, and hopefully things will turn around. But I suspect today will probably end the negative today. Just looks that way for what we're seeing right now. But thank you so much, my friends, for tuning in and being here on our, I guess, yeah, I think it's our first episode here in September of 2023, and being part of the Level Up Live community and family. It's great to have you. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up, please, and hit that like button. And of course, hit subscribe so you can keep on top of our latest episodes. And as a reminder, you can find full episodes of Level Up with Winnie Sun on NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, and many other streaming platforms. And you can check out Yes Factor, which is our podcast called Yes Factor with Winnie Sun, which is on Apple Podcasts and the LinkedIn Podcast Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your support and your friendship. We'll return again this week for even more insight. Until then, have a beautiful day, stay well, and take care. Bye-bye now.